The Roman Empire, the world's greatest superpower, didn't die from the sword, but from something far quieter: its own economy. There was a time when Roman gold ruled the world, when every coin stamped with Caesar as face was a promise of wealth, power, and eternal order. But that promise was broken. What happens when an empire that conquered the world can no longer pay its own soldiers? When money loses its meaning, and trust, the invisible glue of civilization, turns to dust. In the first centuries of Rome, wealth flowed like a river from every conquest. From Gaul to Egypt, mountains of gold, silver, and slaves filled the imperial treasuries. A single aureus coin could buy a horse, a feast, or even a man's freedom. Merchants crossed seas for Roman currency. Farmers and nobles alike hoarded coins as symbols of strength. Money was not just metal. It was Rome itself. But empires, like men, grow greedy. The victories slowed. The borders stopped moving. By the 2nd century, the flow of plundered wealth had dwindled. Yet Rome's appetite for luxuries, for armies, for monuments, only grew stronger. To sustain the illusion of abundance, emperors turned to the mint. It started small. A few grains less gold in a coin. A little more copper mixed into the silver. Who would notice? The coins looked the same. The emperor's face still shone under the torchlight. But in taverns and markets, whispers began. Merchants started weighing coins. Bakers demanded more denarii for bread. The people could feel it. Something was wrong. Rome's money was dying. By the time of Emperor Caracalla, the once pure denarius had lost a third of its silver. Within decades, it became little more than bronze washed with silver dust, a cheap imitation of glory. Prices soared beyond imagination. A soldier's pay that once fed his family for months could barely buy him a meal. In the bustling forums, trade slowed. Shopkeepers refused the emperor's currency, demanding payment in grain, wine, or iron. Farmers abandoned the cities, retreating to the countryside to live off the land. For the first time in centuries, Roman citizens began to barter, not because they wanted to, but because their empire's money had lost its meaning. Inflation became a monster no one could control. Historical records tell us that between 200 and 300 AD, prices rose more than 1,000 times. A sack of wheat that once cost a handful of coins now required a wagon load. In desperation, emperors raised taxes. But how do you tax people whose coins are worthless? Collectors demanded payments in goods, oil, meat, clothing, driving more citizens into poverty. Families sold heirlooms to survive. Soldiers deserted their posts. Thieves and black markets thrived in the ruins of order. Then came Diocletian, a general turned emperor, determined to save the collapsing world. He reorganized the empire, doubled the army, and rebuilt the bureaucracy. But to do all that, he needed gold, and Rome had none left. So he issued the infamous edict on maximum prices in 301 AD. It was meant to freeze prices and end greed, but it was a law against reality. Merchants who broke the law were executed. Yet markets continued to crumble because no one trusted money anymore. Diocletian's attempt to fix the economy only exposed its corpse. Coins were worthless. Trust was dead. Trade was a shadow of its former self. In letters from the time, Roman citizens write of starvation, hoarding, and despair. Parents abandoned children they could no longer feed. Veterans, once proud defenders of the empire, begged in the streets. And in the provinces, Governors began minting their own local coins, defying Rome itself. The empire was fragmenting, not by rebellion, but by bankruptcy. Gold had once been the empire's god, and now that god had failed. Temples still stood, but their marble shone over empty coffers. Even the army, Rome's iron backbone, demanded pay in kind, food, land, and promises. Without wealth, power dissolved, and without power, the illusion of eternity cracked. By the 5th century, the eternal city was a ghost of its past. The great legions had become mercenary bands, fighting for whoever could feed them. The Senate, once the voice of empire, became silent. The once mighty Rome that had conquered the known world now struggled to buy its own peace. And so, the empire that believed it would last forever, ended not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet decay of trust. Because when money dies, empires follow. Rome didn't fall in a night. It faded coin by coin, lie by lie, until nothing remained but dust and memory. And in that silence, the world learned a timeless truth. Gold may rule the world, but trust builds it.